So friends, a new federal court of appeals ruling makes clear that Trump U.S. attorneys from coast to coast are in their jobs unlawfully. Let's talk about that, because justice matters. Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So friends, it's almost like the Trump administration is allergic to the rule of law. A unanimous 3-judge appeals court ruling just held that one of Trump's former personal attorneys, Alina Habba, is unlawfully serving as United States Attorney for the District of New Jersey. No, you can't make this stuff up. Let's start with the new reporting. This from the New York Times. Headline, Appeals Court says Alina Habba is unlawful U.S. attorney. I mean, friends, you have just one job as the United States Attorney for the District of New Jersey, the top federal prosecutor for that state. You just have to follow and enforce the law, and you don't even know enough to realize that you are in the position unlawfully. I mean, these people wear their illegality as some sort of a badge of merit. All my editorial edition. The judges wrote that the Trump administration appeared to have become frustrated by legal and political barriers that have prevented its preferred U.S. attorneys from leading federal prosecutors' offices. A federal appeals court said on Monday that Alina Habba had been serving unlawfully as the U.S. Attorney in New Jersey, dealing a blow to the Trump administration and most likely setting up a showdown at the Supreme Court. Ms. Habba is one of a number of U.S. attorneys whom the Trump administration has sought to keep in power through a series of unusual maneuvers, even though she was neither confirmed by the Senate nor appointed by district trial court judges, the two traditional pathways. Defendants in New Jersey had challenged her authority as U.S. attorney, leading to Monday's decision. In its ruling, the 3-judge panel, based in Philadelphia, affirmed an earlier ruling by a federal district court judge. The court said that the government's tactics, meaning the Trump administration's tactics, had violated the law as written, and concluded that, overall, the Trump administration appeared to have become frustrated by legal and political barriers to place its favored U.S. attorneys in charge. The maneuvers undertaken to keep Ms. Habba in charge exemplified the difficulties the administration had faced, the judges wrote, and yet, they said, the citizens of New Jersey and the loyal employees in the U.S. Attorney's Office deserve some clarity and stability. And friends, you know what else the people of New Jersey and the employees, the hardworking career public servants of the New Jersey U.S. Attorney's Office deserve? They deserve a presidential administration and an attorney general who show at least some minimal allegiance to the rule of law and to the Constitution. So friends, let's unpack this one, and I'm going to try to boil it down to its essence. This issue involves both federal law, federal statutes, and the U.S. Constitution. An interim U.S. attorney, think temporary U.S. attorney, can serve in that status for 120 days. However, if the Senate hasn't confirmed that nominee as the permanent U.S. attorney within the 120 days, the law provides that the judges in that federal district, the District of New Jersey, get to make the decision. This is the federal law. They get to make the decision as to whether Alina Habba should continue as interim U.S. attorney or whether they, the judges, want to appoint somebody else. Guess what they decided? Shocking. Hell no, they didn't want Alina Habba to continue as U.S. attorney for the District of New Jersey. For gosh sakes, she had no criminal law experience. She had never served as a prosecutor. I think she was legal counsel for a parking lot somewhere in New York or New Jersey, and she was one of Donald Trump's former personal lawyers. No, of course she was not competent. She was ill-suited to be in that position. So the federal judges in that district named somebody else to be interim U.S. attorney until the Senate acted on a properly nominated U.S. attorney and confirmed that person. And the judges actually put in the position somebody who was eminently qualified. I believe she was the criminal division chief of that U.S. attorney's office, the New Jersey office, who had tons of experience, including prosecuting, MS-13, major gang cases. That is who the federal judges decided, in accordance with the law, should continue as the interim or acting U.S. attorney until somebody was confirmed. The Trump administration said, we don't care what the federal law says. We don't care that Congress has the opportunity to confirm or decline to confirm somebody we nominated. Screw all that. We're going to keep Alina Habba in that position unlawfully, in violation of both the law and ultimately the United States Constitution. And a 3-judge Court of Appeals panel just unanimously said, no, it's unlawful. You can't do it. Who were the 3 judges? Well, 2 of them were appointed by George W. Bush, and one was appointed by Barack Obama. The author of the opinion for the 3-judge panel is actually one of the George W. Bush appointees. And friends, here's just a little flavor of what that judge, Judge D. Michael Fisher, authored for the unanimous 3-judge panel. Under the government's, the Department of Justice's, the Trump administration, under the government's delegation theory, Habba may avoid the gauntlet of presidential appointment and Senate confirmation and serve as the de facto, in fact, U.S. attorney indefinitely. This view is so broad that it bypasses the constitutional process entirely. Of course, bypassing the Constitution entirely is kind of standard operating procedure for the Trump administration, right? Okay, friends, a few quick takeaways. This is the first appellate court opinion ruling that this scheme by the Trump administration is unlawful and unconstitutional, but there are 4 federal trial court opinions that reached the same conclusion. One in California, one in Nevada, of course this one in New Jersey. A trial court judge ruled previously that Alina Habba was in the job unlawfully, and today the Court of Appeals affirmed that decision. They agreed and issued the ruling we're discussing today. And the 4th state, Virginia. The Eastern District of Virginia, U.S. Attorney's Office. How can we forget that Trump flunky Lindsay Halligan was also unlawfully appointed as U.S. Attorney in that office, and that resulted in the dismissal of 2 criminal indictments. Of course, those indictments were against Trump's, perceived enemies, James Comey and Letitia James. So the good news, if there is any good news, is, those were vindictive prosecutions in the first place, and they would have been dismissed on any number of challenges. They were, of course, dismissed because Lindsay Halligan was unlawfully appointed, just like Alina Habba, just like the U.S. Attorney in the Middle District of California and the one out in Nevada. Takeaway number 2, friends, Donald Trump and Pam Bondi's lawlessness is endangering the people of those 4 states, California, Nevada, New Jersey, Virginia, by putting in jeopardy the legitimacy of every prosecution brought, every case undertaken by U.S. attorneys who are unlawfully in the position. That is a public safety danger. It is governmental insanity to endanger all federal prosecutions in all of those federal jurisdictions, all 4 of those states, because the Trump administration doesn't give a rat's ass about the rule of law or about the Constitution. Okay, friends, now let's get to the question that I just know y'all are already thinking about: the Supreme Court. Yes, of course, the Trump administration, the Department of Justice, will try to convince the Supreme Court to take this case up for review. First of all, they shouldn't. There is no complicated or thorny constitutional issue at play here. The federal law is clear. The Constitution is clear. There's no reason, no legitimate reason, based on the law, based on the facts, based on the Constitution, for the Supreme Court to accept this case for review. But will they? Well, let's see. Have they done favors for Donald Trump previously when neither the facts nor the law nor the Constitution supported what they did? Hell, they made up presidential immunity out of whole cloth and contrary to the express language of the Constitution. You know, that whole business about the president must take care that the laws of the nation are faithfully executed. That's kind of the opposite of what the, radical right-wing majority of the Supreme Court said, that a president can commit all the crimes he wants, victimizing the American people up one side and down the other, and he can do it with complete immunity from prosecution. Yeah, that's the opposite of the text of the Constitution. So will they accept this case for review? Will they undo or ignore or contradict the federal law and the Constitution? Maybe. That seems to have been a pretty safe bet, recently for the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court seems determined to forever let Donald Trump expand presidential power. And I hate to even go here, friends, but I'm going to go dark for just a minute. When I look at the nature of the federal law, the statutory scheme that says, okay, a president can appoint an interim U.S. attorney for 120 days, but after that, if the Senate hasn't acted to confirm the nomination, then a separate co-equal branch of government, the judiciary, gets to wade in on an executive branch decision, and they get to name a U.S. attorney who will continue, until the Senate confirms somebody the president appoints. Can't you just hear the Thomases and the Alitos saying, wait a minute, that infringes on the all-powerful executive branch prerogative? Yes, I'm mocking it as best I can because, a majority of the justices seem to have abandoned all loyalty to the notion of 3 co-equal branches of government, of checks and balances. They've abandoned, in many cases, the express text of the Constitution, like an insurrectionist can't hold office, is disqualified from holding office, but they've done it time and again. They've done Donald Trump big, fat solids in their rulings. So I'm sorry to go dark there. That is my lingering concern that I have that may prompt the Supreme Court to say, sure, we'll accept this case for review, and we will ignore or violate the federal law and the Constitution and let Donald Trump put any idiot, incompetent, or imbecile in the position of U.S. attorney so that person, those people, can do his dirty bidding. Let's hope to hell the Supreme Court doesn't go that route, because justice matters. Thank you for bearing with me through that rant. And as always, please stay safe, please stay tuned, and I look forward to talking with you all again tomorrow.